Good morning, everyone. Hope you're doing well. I just wanted to come on today and share some reflections as a result of a couple of things that happened yesterday. So I was doing a webinar yesterday with Paul, and there was a question, a really relevant question that somebody asked, and it got me reflective, and it got me reflective on something else that happened yesterday as well. That I'd seen, and I thought I'd kind of cop on today and sort of combine the two and give a deeper answer to the one that I gave on the webinar yesterday, just for general consumption, because I think it's really helpful for all of us to kind of reflect on this and get curious about it. Now, on the webinar, we were talking about how often what traps us are misunderstandings we've got about how things work, innocent misunderstandings about how things that we've got about how things work, and how some of the job of coaching is about getting people curious about their understanding of things so that they can start to reflect and see anew. And the reason I wanted to sort of share was yesterday I was going through some old photos, and I happened to come across a photo of me with hair, which hopefully will be attached to this blog somehow. And of me doing a firewalk quite a long time ago, probably about 18, 17 years ago, something like that. Now, I was curious about it because I was remembering what I sort of learned about firewalks. And I remember thinking at the beginning when somebody said to me, you're going to do a firewalk, walk on hot coals. I was like, that's crazy. I'm going to get burned feet. That just looks stupid. Why would I do that? And yet, clearly, it was possible on some level. And, people were able to do this. Now, as I started, engaged in the teaching and was being taught about how firewalks worked, what I learned was, and really important, if you're even thinking about doing this, you don't listen to me right now specifically, you go and check this for yourself. But what I learned was that the reason you don't get burned is the coal, or the burning bit, is actually made of wood, and it's kind of like smoldering wood. And the reason you don't get burned is because, wood is a really bad conductor. And so apparently are the soles of our feet. I think it's something to do with the blood supply in our feet or something like that. And so as long as you keep walking across the coals, across the hot wood, the smoldering wood, you don't get burned, because there's just not enough time for the wood to be in contact with your foot in order for your skin to get burnt. And on some level, I think we all know this. Like if you put your hand inside the oven when it's on, and again, be very careful with any kind of these things. If you put your hand in an oven which is turned on and it just goes in, like the air is not such a good conductor, from what I understand. So you don't feel the heat so much as if you touch the metal in the oven, which is a really good conductor, and then you get burnt very, very quickly. Don't go and do that, by the way. So there's an answer there, which is a physics answer, right? The reason you don't get burned when you walk across, hot smoldering wood is if you are walking with enough pace, even it's just regular walking, as far as I understand it, then there's just not enough time for the conductivity of the wood to burn your feet, right? So that's an example of how you begin to have a different understanding of something, and it opens the door to something new. So the minute I started to understand, oh, this is the physics of how this works, the idea of walking across the hot coals or the hot wood, well, it still didn't seem like the best idea, if I'm honest with you, but at least it started to look like I wasn't going to get burned if I did it, as long as I was mindful of the physics of how it all worked. Now, somebody asked on the webinar that was on last night, when we were talking about sort of correcting misunderstandings and this sort of thing, it was basically, the question was, well, by whose standard are we correcting misunderstandings and judging what is an understanding or a misunderstanding? Good question. In the example I just gave, I suppose somebody was correcting my misunderstanding of physics. Never my strong suit in life. But the more I had my understanding corrected according to how physics actually worked, it was like, okay, this becomes more possible. Now, as coaches, a lot of the time, we share our understanding of things. So a client will come to us and go, well, I'm really stuck with anxiety. I'm really stuck with, I don't know, whatever it might be. And they'll have a particular understanding about anxiety that kind of leads you to, or is clearly leading them to be stuck, which is why they're trying to get help with it. And it's a bit like standing at the precipice of walking on the hot coals. You're going, yeah, this looks bad. This looks like something that is really not a good idea. And so when they come to us and we have a different understanding of anxiety, we can share that with them with a view to potentially helping them to open up to a different way of seeing what looks problematic to them. So in other words, we're sharing our understanding of the physics of anxiety. Now, this is where we've got to be careful, right? I don't know that what I share with people about my understanding of things, I don't know if it's objectively as true as, you know, the firewalk example. I don't know if, you know, me seeing that anxiety is actually more normal than we perhaps think it is in our world. And actually, it tends to be more transient than we think it is when we just leave it alone. I don't know if that is objectively as solid from a physics perspective as, hey, if you walk across the hot wood and you don't, you know, stop on it or anything like that, the conductivity will not burn your foot. I don't know if my understanding is as solid as that from a physics perspective. But here's the thing, in a way, it doesn't matter. Here's why. If someone is stuck and they're stuck because of an understanding and somebody else does not see that same thing as problematically because they have a different understanding, the very sharing of that different understanding can still do something for somebody who is stuck. The reason is that it begins to create a what's the word? A chink, if you like. It makes their understanding a little bit less solid. And they might go, oh, such and such coach has shared this. Actually, that looks true. That looks really helpful. Maybe they take it on board. Great. That's really good. But as I'm constantly saying to people I work with, please don't just accept what I share of my experience and my knowing as gospel, right? Bump up against it. See what it does for you. Maybe it does nothing for you in the substance of it, but it could still do something for you if you can begin to see, well, it's interesting how two people can see or have the same thing in their life, but perceive them really differently. So even if you don't take on what has been shared with you that's different to your understanding, the fact that there can be different understandings can actually open the door to you beginning to look for yourself and saying, well, what do you see? And what do you now know? And sometimes you might see what was shared with you. You know, you might see the same thing. I don't care in a way if you do. And that's not to mean I don't actually care, but it doesn't matter to me if somebody sees exactly what I see. It matters that I've done enough to create some kind of breakage in the solidity of whatever understanding might have been keeping people trapped, right? It matters that I've opened the door for them to go and look for themselves and see something new, because potentially that opens them up to being less stuck. So I hope that's helpful. And I'm really grateful for the person who asked the question, because actually it made me go off and go, you know what, this is really good for people to reflect on. Please don't ever accept what anybody else tells you about, you know, how things work without going and checking first if it resonates with you. But it's always good to see, though, that there can be multiple understandings of things, because the very fact that that seems to be true means that we can stay open. And if things aren't working for us, we can get curious and go, maybe my understanding isn't quite right here. I wonder what there is to see. I wonder what else might be available if I go and look again. So thanks for everyone answer to that question. It was really helpful, and I hope this little bit of share has been helpful for you guys too. Sending lots of love. Have a good day. Take care. Bye.